Hello, it is me. Today I decided, after thinking about all the kinds of videos that I've made and all the ones that I can make, I decided that a good thing to do would be to focus this time on the concept of what on-model actually means. And to that end, I decided to use Goku, from Dragon Ball Z or Dragon Ball or GT, if that's anything, as an example of what I'm going to be going over. This is probably going to take a while. The introduction's probably going to take a while because I'm going to be going over a lot of different artists that have drawn him on the show over the years. I'm not sure what Toriyama's actual process was, but I'm sure that he must have had people that did things like ink work and stuff like that. So I'm sure that there is probably cases where the person doing the ink work has a slightly different style and so on. But I'll first off start out with showing you a picture of Goku on page 3 of the original Dragon Ball manga, and on the right side, an image of Resurrection F. The style obviously has changed quite a lot over time. And on the left side here, you can kind of see, and by the way, I'm having to use Photoshop for this so that I can load in images as quickly as possible, which we'll see later. But otherwise, Photoshop really gets on my nerves because it likes to help, like undoing. Undoing will make you go over to other layers sometimes, and that's another story. Anyways, Toriyama originally began drawing little Goku here, this little monkey man, in a more wild way. You'll notice with some of the early Dragon Ball keyframers, especially, they would often draw his spikes kind of pointing straight up, and it's more like this was his. It's more like this was his actual hairstyle, and these little 3 prongs were meant to look like bedhead. And the style just naturally evolved over time until we have kind of this more forward-pointing look that he has nowadays. But you notice from like the way that he's drawing Goku here, it's not really detail-oriented. It's certainly not shading-oriented. And whenever he draws them, you can tell that he uses very, very even kind of curved strokes to everything. Almost like he's doing one pass over, holding down the pen as tightly as he can, if I were to guess, so that he has proper control over it. And drawing it just like that. More specifically, or less specifically, I should say, you notice like whenever he's drawing his arms, like they're very small, very compact, lacking detail, of course, once again. Almost kind of lumpy, kind of bulby, or, not almost kind of fat looking in a way, is the way that Goku was originally drawn. And over time, that has evolved in many different ways, which I guess I'll talk about later on. And now we have sort of this style, which is not anywhere near as organic as this style is. In the sense that this one looks a bit more freehand. It looks like it would be easier to sort of animate through, but it's not as tight, I guess I should say. Whereas this one is, specifically because it's drawn digitally, it's very fucking tight. Like, everything has very specific geometry about it. It is adhering very rigidly to a very specific way of drawing each one of these characters. Like, Goku is always, in the movie, going to be drawn with 1, 2, 3, then this little thing, 4, 5, 6 bangs. It is going to be that way uniform throughout the entire thing. And it's drawn this way these days because of the move to digital to try to make sure that everything looks consistent and everything looks clean. I personally don't care for it. My favorite era in Dragon Ball animation was probably during the Saiyan saga up until kind of the beginning and middle point of the Frieza saga. And I'll go more into that later. But like you notice, it's very obviously digital because, like, the lines don't taper at all. Like, they don't kind of ease into a point. They're just lines. Like, they're just lines that just kind of sit there. Doesn't look too good in still frames. It doesn't look too bad in animation. Especially, like, specifically Resurrection. I'm thinking of the scene where they fight all the guys, all the soldiers. They look fairly well because you don't really have time to look at things like Vegeta's like little bicep line ending abruptly right here with no blending whatsoever. Whenever you draw by hand, you don't really get that problem. Unless, of course, you like Toriyama, apparently, and he draws lines like this. Defeating my point, Toriyama, not helping me. Alright. But what I thought I would do is first direct you to a resource. And that resource is, if I can get the text thing to work today. Yes, okay. And that resource is this. This resource is probably going to explain all the animation styles of Dragon Ball a lot better than I can, but I wanted to point it out because I was going to use it as a reference throughout this video. This is important because it does list all the studios that were involved. It often lists the animation supervisors, and it will often list the keyframe personnel that operated under those animation supervisors. And I guess just to get it out of the way, first off, to be able to explain, I'll link this in the description, by the way, just to make this as clear as possible. I'll explain briefly the studio system. Basically how it works is this. A studio will get an episode that they need to animate, right? They get one episode. I mean, they get more than that, but they'll get an episode. And they will have either 1 to, like 4 or 5, maybe more than that. Usually kind of in that range. Guys that do keyframes. And if you don't know what a keyframe is, I'll briefly explain this. Like if you're having a ball bouncing, most obvious example, that a keyframe would be 1, 2, 3. Like these are the keyframes that you have to worry about during the animation of whatever it is that you're animating, in this case a ball. And the animation supervisor is usually the guy that's doing a lot of the keyframes. Sometimes he takes on more, it just depends on the studio, takes on more of a supervisor role and he'll do some of the work, but he has like a head kind of keyframe guy that does a big portion of it, or maybe it's split off evenly across all of them. It just depends on the studio, man. So, below that, after you get a keyframer, whether it's one guy or multiple guys, to get a keyframe of a sequence down, like this ball in this case, then you'll hand it down to your guy below that. And the guy below that will basically do in-betweens of the keyframes. And this either can be where it ends, or they can go a step below even that, and have another in-betweener focus on the things that are happening in between this. And that's where the bulk of the work comes in. And whenever you see like studios that have hundreds of guys working, that's where that's coming from. Most of the people working are just in-betweeners. And to make that a little bit more clear, like say, like this is a keyframe, obviously. So Goku has like his hair strand right here. And let's say that he was like moving, like looking over in this direction or something. So the next keyframe might be like right here, like his hair is moved over from here to here. So the person in charge of the in-between, this is where the term in-betweener comes from, is, all he has to do is just look at both drawings and then go, well, if this line is here and now it's here, then I'll just draw one right in the middle. And sometimes that doesn't always work, like depending on what the speed of the movement happens to be and so on. Then it's not always going to be directly in the center, like if he's moving very fast, then like if it's like 1, 2, 3, then 2 might actually not be in the middle, it might be like over here. Because, it moves so fast that whenever he slows down, then you need more frames right here for it to make any sense visually. But you get the idea. In-between work is not quite as complicated. So that's the reason why that keyframers usually are the ones that do most of that work. And that's where the importance of being on model comes from. Because if you have people drawing the characters in completely different ways, then there's no consistency, and it creates a lot of problems, both from a marketing standpoint and from the standpoint of getting people under you to work efficiently. Because if you have one keyframe that looks like this, and you have another keyframe that looks like this, then it's going to be a hell of a lot of work trying to keep everything uniform. It won't work at all. But this animation styles guide that I linked earlier is going to go over things a lot more in depth than I am going to. I will try to talk about people's names where I possibly can, but if I don't, then you can't really blame me too much. Now, first thing to show off, I guess, use this as a resource. Original Goku, drawn by a guy named Maeda, I believe. Minoru. This is another thing, I'm not going to pronounce all these Japanese names correctly. They're not named Joe in most cases, so... White man me is going to struggle with it. Good old white people. Alright, but you see that original Goku, and this will be a good resource to show right next to not Xenoverse, Resurrection F Goku. Notice like this Goku, even though he's much younger, obviously, his eyes kind of take this shape, and you can kind of see that over time it has evolved into this, where it's kind of more squared off. Don't do that. Don't do that, Photoshop. It's kind of more squared off. His pupils have become larger. But it still kind of follows that same train of thought that you need to keep one side of his eyes completely open. Like, you don't close it off with a line. You allow whoever's doing the color work to take care of that for you. His hair originally, like I pointed out over here, originally sometimes it would be pointing kind of straight up. It kind of still takes that route in early Dragon Ball, where it's kind of in the middle. Like, some of them are trying to point down, some of them are trying to point up, and it kind of closes off towards a center direction. Even on this side, it kind of does that same thing. Whereas with modern Goku, it's kind of they're just big triangular areas, and they can kind of all usually point down a little bit. So the very minor differences in between both of these things, this is going to be probably the most exaggerated example. Studio Juno, if I'm saying that correctly, is probably my favorite of all the studios. They did a lot of the... Like they did, for example, like the episode where Goku is fighting Vegeta and uses the Kaioken attack, if you know anything about DBZ. A lot of these are pretty detail-oriented. They have very good structure in terms of how they define his body, his muscles, and so on. The animation is not tight, but it's not overly loose. It just looks really, really good in motion. Whoever's doing the keyframes for all this did a very good job. And it probably wasn't Maeda. He had a bunch of other keyframe artists under him, so whenever you see, even though, like, Juno is credited with animating all these episodes, in some cases, you can't just take a frame of animation and say, oh, that's this guy, exactly. You can never be too sure, because of all sorts of various reasons. And those reasons being, of course, that there's more than one guy working on them, drawing them, but they don't say who did what frame, obviously. Some of them are going to be in between frames and you don't realize it. Sometimes there will be a keyframe guy that's not particularly good, so he has a guy under him come in to sort of shore up the keyframes. So it's a little bit of both. You never know. You just never know. Other examples of Studio Junio's work, you can kind of see where this is going. Even with... Even across Dragon Ball and all these different styles, you can see, like, once they're told you need to be more detail-oriented, they'll create more definition. But the general structure of how they draw everyone's bodies and stuff kind of generally remains the same. It's very, like, even Dragon Ball was obviously kind of more blobby. The way everything was drawn was a bit more shape-oriented, as opposed to being more detail-oriented. Later on in DBZ, they start getting a little bit more realistic-looking in some ways. But you guys get the idea. Everyone looks just like that. So, moving on from Junio, I spent 40 minutes on this last time, so I'm trying to make sure I get through this as quickly as possible. Moving on from Junio, we'll move on to... I'm moving down the list of that resource that I was talking about before, if you want to follow along. We'll be looking at Sagasha next, if I'm saying that correctly again. And you'll see from the way that this is drawn, I'm not going to do a full analysis on every single one of these things. But early Dragon Ball, again, very sort of modular drawing in the sense of kind of blobby, but very geometric. Like everything forms kind of a very basic shape. Because that's how early Toriyama was. They're trying to make sure that it's not overly detail-oriented, so everything sort of is not really stiff and rigid, but it forms coherent wholes more often than not. With his hair, you can see, like here, it's pointing down in the case of the studio. So apparently their keyframers really enjoyed going that route. You'll notice, like, for example, variations in the hair, we'll be seeing this a lot. In this case, his hair is doing this motion. But if you go up to, say, up here, you notice that it now has this little cleft or the extra angle in it. And a lot of the times, a lot of the keyframers will add that into his hair strands and make it a little bit more angular looking. It just depends on who's drawing it. There's all sorts of different variations between all these. These might, like I said, may not have been drawn by all the same exact person, but usually a studio does sort of have a generally consistent, generally consistent type of drawing that they do. Where the hell is he? Okay, Last House. Last House, this guy specifically is probably the most criticized animation supervisor in all of DBZ Dragon Ball, and probably for obvious reasons. Especially, like, this moment. Like, the moment... Why did they give the episode to him? I have no idea. But, the episode right after he transforms, then suddenly this guy takes over, and he has this gigantic, misshapen, horribly off-model, this awful-looking hair that's just going all over the place. Looks absolutely terrible. This guy receives a lot of flack for how he draws all these keyframes. Unfortunately, Last House got a lot of the episodes. Because, as you can probably guess, they weren't high in quality, but they were cheap. They were very, very cheap. Even whenever the way that modus operandi, whatever you want to call it, of drawing all the frames became more detail-oriented, then even then it still kind of looks like it lacks detail. It's really strange looking. Everything is pretty loose. It doesn't convey like motion very well. Like, for example, Goku's hair in this position, that's not a bad still image of Goku, but like his hair is kind of moved up a little bit too far, and it looks like it's kind of floating off of the rest of his hair, as opposed to actually being part of it. Like a lot of the way that the body shapes are drawn, they don't really seem to care about, like, the fingers are not interacting with anything. They're just kind of just floating there. Like, the guy is obviously just focused on getting things out as quickly as he possibly can. So even that is considered to still be on model, even though Last House and Aoshima specifically are usually considered to be the worst out of any selection that you can pluck out of the thing, blah blah. I'm trying to find Studio Live here. I didn't organize these. Well, I organized the shit out of these, but there's just a lot of them to go through. And this is Studio Live, going on the next part of the list. I don't think that they did many episodes. They transitioned into GT whenever that came out. Like, Toei Animation did a lot of GT stuff. But you notice with the way that the keyframers drew this, like his lower strands and hair in general, tend to extend out pretty far. His eyes always follow pretty rigidly the original design concept with, that single kind of no-width line followed by a lot of negative space that's meant to be filled in with color. The way that his limbs are drawn, again, kind of chunky. Even into GT, you can still kind of tell the way that they draw those limbs. It's, it doesn't really have much definition to it. A lot of the times the studios are chosen because the keyframers that they have do match the style of whoever's drawing the manga. And across most of these examples, that's going to be the case with DBZ. That's the reason why that they're picking them, if I can get Photoshop to cooperate. There you go, Photoshop. Good Photoshop. Okay. That's them. Oh, goodness. And, Studio Live, let's go with the Shindo, if I can find Shindo. I tried to name these guys by their, actual, keyframer names in most cases. Some of these I had to go into the episodes themselves and start screen capping things just to be able to get any examples of it. In a lot of the cases, I was not able to find pictures of Goku, so I had to just make do. But with Shindo Productions, you can see here, like the hair is a lot more angular. Whenever we were talking about that cleft earlier, that sharp angle, very jagged, very kind of spiky looking. Even whenever he goes Super Saiyan, like very, very jagged, almost to the point where it looks like they're kind of knife-like, like you could stab yourself on that hair. Even in early Dragon Ball, like there was no real curve to anything. They were just very, very sharp looking. And you see here with that early Dragon Ball way of drawing Goku, again, like he doesn't even have upper arms and lower arms in this case. It's just one whole basic shape. And even with Master Roshi here, it still forms this kind of general one bit of kind of blobby shape to make it look a little bit more cartoony. Whereas as the series got a little bit more realistic, then you start getting a little bit more definition. The shapes stop doing this, and they start kind of following contours of where muscles might be, accurately or not. You guys get the idea. And again, eyes still drawn with the same outer line, negative space on the inside. I haven't said much about the noses. Usually early Dragon Ball, the noses are kind of just boop, little bitty angle. Whereas as the series goes along, you know, as he gets older, then you kind of get this shape, like it goes from, you know, in some cases it is kind of boxed off like this, in an example that I'll show later. Or it's a little bit more tapered off, and sometimes it just kind of just ends in a slight curve. Very different ways of drawing it, but it's still on model. Oh, lordy. I'm going too fast. This guy I wanted to talk about because he's kind of mysterious. Katsumi Aoshima, if I'm saying his name correctly. This guy did not have a studio. Like, I think that they gave most of his keyframes to, like, Toei or something. That's usually what happened. But apparently he did all the keyframes on his own, and he is pretty damn good at it. And I guess he might have worked out of his house or something. But almost nothing is known about the guy. But you can tell that he's pretty damn good at his job. The way that he draws Goku, it's pretty solid. It's hard to even explain this correctly. Like, he has very slight motion to the way he draws his hair. But it's still kind of ends an angle. It doesn't have the that sharp edge that I was talking about. The way that he draws the outline of Goku's face, it's not overly blobby looking. It has strong consistency, but it still has that sort of organic feel to it. And even as the series goes along, he still kind of has that. I wish I could have more examples of his work in Dragon Ball Z, but I don't know if he actually did much work in Dragon Ball Z. You'll find out more about that on that resource that I was talking about. Especially with him, the way that he draws these shapes, like, they're not blobs, they're not noodles. There's consistency and even musculature. Like, you can actually tell where everything ends and begins in relation to how he draws muscles and things. Especially even as time goes on, he continues doing that. And I think most of his best work is in Dragon Ball, because he seems much more fitted to that. He's kind of detail-oriented. You can see this hatching that he puts in anytime that he needs to show something that's not, like, the Resurrection F thing I was showing you, that I was complaining about how nothing tapers and things like that. It lacks that. Like, there's not this kind of sketchiness about things that's meant to imply shadow, where they don't need to actually draw any shadow. But you can definitely tell what this guy's style's like. Very, very solid. Like, the way that he keeps proportions is always very, very uniform. Very good at his job. I like the way that his work actually looks. Now, I don't think I'll go too much into Toei. There's several guys in regards to Toei Animation, because it's such a big studio. A lot of them were GT based, like Goku. a lot of the Toei stuff was just shipped off for GT because that's who took over. For example, this is Akira Inagami. This is, if I could say the name, Katsuyoshi Nakatsuru. Goodness gracious. That's not Goku, but as close as I could possibly get. There it is, okay. But even across Toei, you can kind of see, especially since this is later on in the series, everything starts becoming less organic looking and more rigid in terms of, like, instead of like a line that's kind of an even flowing stroke, it now is more of a sharp, angular one. That shows up a whole bunch in the Saiyan and Frieza saga, and evolves over time. This is Naoki Miyahara. I wanted to show him, primarily because he has a pretty solid style, but it still shows off that sort of modern kind of... It's starting to get really clean looking. It's starting to get very geometric. Like his hair ends in this... Like, his hair has this joint on it, for example. And in addition to that joint, the way that his face is drawn by Miyahara is kind of more flowing. It doesn't have that hard edge on it quite as much. But it also doesn't blob out quite as much either. It's very, very even stroke that flows all the way around across the chin. Even with Super Saiyan 3 Goku, who's supposed to have more jagged features, it still has kind of that flow look to it. This guy is one of the sort of more detail-oriented guys. The way that he draws his musculature is very solid to the point without being overly elaborate. He's a pretty talented guy, but still under Toei animation. The last guy that I'll show off from them, Tekio Aidi, or whatever his name is, for God's sakes. I don't have any images of Goku really to show off. It's kind of hard to track these down, and I think I even had to screen cap that one. I can't remember. No, that was later on. But with him, you can tell that it's still on model, but it's not really as consistent. Like, it's not as solid as far as the framing of all the elements of people's faces go. A lot of kind of detailed, gestural stuff going on. The orientation of, like, the eyes to the mouth and nose and so on are pretty even to the point, which kind of gives you an impression that maybe drawing Dragon Ball Z was not the first thing that was on his palette, you know? So, moving on from Toei animation. Jeez, I'm sure a lot of you guys are getting irritated with this, but, this is what the point of showing all this off is. And this guy is another guy that I especially wanted to show off. Studio Cockpit, Kasuke Masunaga. Why can't they just be named Joe, huh? Like white people do. Us white people, right? But he has a very distinct style. He kind of became very popular very quickly. And probably for good reasons. Especially if you're used to... Like, the demographic of people listening to this video are probably in the age group that they saw the Cell Saga whenever they were, in their sort of young, kind of mid-teens, maybe something like that, probably. So you probably recognize this guy. These are kind of the so-called good animation episodes. He was well known for them. This guy is pretty unique across all of the artists that did work for it, because he's not exactly on model, but he still has a very solid way of drawing the characters. Something that I've noticed with him, the nose, bottom of the nose, is always very, very close to the mouth. Whereas the eyes kind of rise just a little bit above that. And all the facial features are very condensed in this small frame. And the head tends to be a little bit squished down. Unless it's meant to be exaggerated, as in the case with, say, Vegeta. Like, Vegeta obviously has that gigantic forehead on his model, and with this guy, it's even more exaggerated. Again, nose is actually intersecting with the mouth, in this case, because he's looking down, but still very, very close. Eyes still rising above just at that point. Ears occurring at the midpoint of the eyes. Ears are very, very large, even with Goku still very large. Gohan still has that kind of look to him. His are spaced a bit more far apart, it seems. And this is one of the cases of the people that are drawing Goku actually do fill in his eyes completely, which is where a lot of the modern look of Goku comes from. Like, his eyes are now completely squared off. Whereas before in Dragon Ball, they were kind of doing this. Now it's just straight up just, this is how it's being drawn now. So, this guy became well-known. He's pretty detail-oriented, but not overly so. He doesn't use many of those gestural sort of scratchy things to indicate shadow. Although they are present here and there, as you can see, like up here, Gohan's brow. One of the things I appreciate about this guy is, and a lot of you guys are not going to give a crap about this, but this stroke, like right under the eye. This is something that happened a lot in the, because of a Studio Juno. It happened a lot in the Frieza saga and Saiyan saga, but this is meant kind of to show the cheek rising up some. If you've ever seen me draw the girls that were kind of based on the DBZ stuff, then you'll notice that I tend to draw this line a whole lot. I've always liked that because it creates just sort of an element of expression that isn't overly kind of abrasive. It keeps the face from looking a bit too smooth too, if that makes any sense. But anyways, all sorts of different ways of drawing all these characters, but all of them again are on model. Quite a few different guys that we could go down. Should I bother going down any of the rest of these guys? Probably not too much. A lot of the rest of the guys that I collected, if I can find these real fast. Like, I'll just kind of briefly. Like this guy, I think he only, as far as I know, got Photoshop. Stop trying to help me. It's one of the things I hate about using Photoshop. Stop trying to help Photoshop. Thank you. This guy, I wanted to just kind of briefly point out, this guy, I think, only got this one episode, as far as I know, in DBZ. But you kind of notice that he kind of draws the Goku's hair in a very literal way. He has sort of definition, but the way that he draws Goku is pretty stiff, animation in general. So even though things are moving kind of realistically, I guess, it doesn't convey in animation movement and speed too well. His bangs kind of almost end abruptly, like they're actual bangs from another style completely, and then they start shooting out into these kind of plant leaf shapes in a very strange way. A lot of people that draw Goku as a Super Saiyan tend to do this, give him these little leaf strands. Very strange. Studio Carpenter. Yuji Hakamada drew these images. This is another one of the ones that I had the screen cap. Not known for his accuracy to the model. He kind of has... I almost want to say that these are from two different keyframers. They're from the episode that he's credited on having worked on. But it does look like these are two keyframes. And this... I know for a fact that this is something that lingers on the screen for a while, so it has to be a keyframe. But it looks like it was drawn by two different people, because this one has a bit more of these gestural lines to indicate hair, whereas this, they're kind of there, but they're just so lazily placed, and it almost looks like whoever drew this one... Come on, Photoshop. Whoever drew this one was almost drawing it at an angle, because everything seems to be veering off in this direction. The way that the eyebrows are drawn, these kind of triangles that come down like this. The eyes are closed off once again. He also has this little thing, but fuck this guy. And the way that he draws kind of the angles is kind of even strokes, but at the same time, the problem with this guy, I guess, is that his overall form to the drawings is not particularly great. He's kind of an in-between in the sense of... He's not too great, not too bad either, I guess. Just nothing special. K-Production. This is from the episode where, what's his face? I guess Explorer's gonna lock up now. Great, that's great. From the episode where Videl was getting her shit crushed by some guy that I can't remember. I thought of his name a couple minutes ago. Now I can't think of it. Spopovich, that's what it is, Spopovich. But she was getting her shit pushed in by Spopovich. They didn't show Goku off too much during this episode for some reason. Like, he had a bunch of close-ups, and there was only a couple instances where they show a three-quarter shot of him, and those are like just his back, so I didn't really have anything that I could screen cap very well. But you can already tell, like, it's kind of hard to place a lot of the times what the differences between these are, but it obviously is different. This is a bit cleaner. Like, there are some gestural strokes here, but they're very limited. Quite a bit of space in between features. The way that his features are placed are very evenly proportioned, like they're like the other guy, where everything is like much smaller and the nose is down here and the eyes are up here and so on. Very kind of safe proportions to everyone. The way that he draws the hair, again, has this angular kind of confinement to it. Ears, again, large, which I guess is kind of just a Dragon Ball thing. The way he draws the noses. He does this kind of thing that occurs in DBZ that I also use. Very nice little gesture that kind of just implies the nose. You guys get the idea with him. Last one, Shindo Productions. If I can find him real fast. This is just to show this off briefly. Super Saiyan 3 episode. I think he did some more, but this is probably the most infamous. All right, Photoshop. No, thank you, Jesus. Photoshop always trying to help, trying to be so helpful. Doesn't let me answer it. No, leave me alone. But with this guy, again, kind of drawing these kind of plant leaf shapes in regards to how he... By the way, you notice I have to keep selecting everything in Photoshop. Because if I don't, whenever I try to hit delete to get rid of the line that I just drew, then it deletes the whole layer. But if I undo, it will... let's see if I can go back all the way. Create a layer just to show this off because I want to bitch about it. Like, I create a layer, start drawing on it, then I hit undo, and it wants to... Well, if I create a new layer, it doesn't want to... It does do it. But if it was an existing layer, then it probably would have gone back to whatever layer that I had just selected. Like, Photoshop does not have any consistency. It just really gets on my nerves. I hate doing work in Photoshop unless I have to. Cannot stand using Photoshop because of all these quote-unquote helpful features. Anyways. This guy has a lot more chin to the way that he draws Goku. Select all. Delete. Thank you, Photoshop. Kind of as DBZ went on, you have a lot more of this kind of muscles, just kind of muscle shapes encroaching on one another and overlapping like crazy. Even if it's not detail-oriented, it's still... There's a lot of lines to his form, his general form. Eyes, again, completely closed. Ears pretty big. Eyebrows forming this one basic shape. It doesn't kind of come down any. It's always this one line that stretches out in a very stiff way, very rigid. Nose in this case, not small, very pointy, but not overly pointy. And even whenever he goes full on SS3, that's good. Way to import that, Photoshop. Good job. You're really good at this. Are you just not going to give me the resize? Transform tools, just not going to do it? Not going to do it? Not going to do it, buddy? Oh, I have to no, thank you, Photoshop. Thank you so much. You're being so helpful right now. I really appreciate it. There we go. That's its native size. Good job, Photoshop. Who's a big boy? Fuck Adobe. Anyways. Like you can see, just like one of the few instances where I actually can find a full body shot. Later on, Goku tends to be drawn with these very long legs, which is kind of funny because he was drawn so blobby early on in Dragon Ball. I've said this before, but usually you want to keep the wrist sort of where the groin is. You want to keep the midpoint of the arms kind of where the bottom of the rib cage is. And all of that stays true, but as a result, you get kind of a very squat torso, very squat rib cage, extremely squat, with very long anime legs that don't make any sense. Very kind of common, I don't even want to call it a mistake exactly, just a lot of Japanese people draw that way for some reason. So even like a character, they can say this character is 5'6" like your ordinary person in Asia. But they'll still look like they have the body of someone that's 7 feet tall. Because, I don't know, it's something they do, man. It's something they do. Anyway, so you get the idea. These are all the people that I wanted to go through. Again, you know, hair kind of coming off in these weird leaf shapes, especially when they're going Super Saiyan. Does not have this kind of jagged edge to his cheek like he does most of the time. Even at this distance, like this is a panning out shot, still has these very sharp lines to denote musculature and so on. Okay, now, I'll go ahead and tell you guys that I'm tired. But I have not drawn Goku before, as far as I can remember. I did go to this I used to work with some black guy that was really big into DBZ, and he took me over to his house and was like, look at these pictures I drew of Gohan, he's so cool. I'm like, yeah. I made those noises. And he was very proud. He didn't draw too poorly or anything. Like, he obviously was not going to be keyframing for anyone anytime soon. But they were pretty good, just, you know, one of the black weeaboo guys. One of the black weeaboo guys. Which is kind of almost creepier than white weeaboo guys in a way. Because the black weeaboo guys usually look like they could beat the shit out of you anyways. Whereas the white weeaboo guys, let's be racist today, usually just look like pieces of human garbage. Okay, no, it shouldn't be. Some people might actually take me seriously. Alright, but the next thing I'm going to be doing in this, after this live com, I'll be doing post-com entirely, and I will attempt to draw Goku in my own way while trying to stay on model. And we'll see how that goes, because, like I said, I don't think I've ever drawn Goku, so we'll just kind of see what happens. And it's going to be especially fun since after we have gone through and looked at all the masters that were animation supervisors for entire studios, that even if they had flaws, still look good. Let's see what Plague of Gripes can do, right? Let's see what poop that I can throw onto the canvas. There is one last thing that I wanted to say in relation to the people that actually do these things, like the Last House guy that we're talking about before. The guy that did these things. Supposedly the people that were actually under him, like his keyframe personnel, were actually pretty good. But since he was in charge of so much of the overall look of his episodes, it translated in very poorly. And you might wonder, why is the guy that has the least amount of talent in charge of producing these? And there's a reason for that, and it's because, especially in Japanese corporations, and it follows through with animation studios too, seniority matters above all else. The longer you have been there, the more likely you are to end up being the head honcho eventually. And if you are just so bad that even the person in charge is like, man, I suck, then eventually he'll kind of step down mysteriously. This is kind of how Japanese stuff goes. They don't look through and go, okay, this guy is good at this. This guy would be the most qualified. And then they make him like the head honcho or something. They don't do that. They're like, well, he's been here the longest, so therefore he should be the one in charge. Even if it's the worst idea ever. And that was the case with this guy. It was the worst idea ever, but he was there, so he had to be the one to do the thing. That's the reason why sometimes it looks like poop. And there's no consistency. And I think one of these examples, you should do some reading on this if you're interested in this at all, in that thing that I linked earlier. But in the case of one of them, I do remember that he actually had someone go in and correct all of a lot of his keyframes. And as a result, I'm trying to find which one it was, actually. It might actually be crap. I don't know. But one of the examples, another guy worked with him so long that they would actually, you could see the animation style shift during episodes very strangely. Because, especially later on, because the guy that was doing all the fixing just gave up, basically, and went on and did something else. And I think the other guy ended up retiring or something like that. But anyways, let's start up Photoshop. Let's start up Photoshop Psi, Paint Tool Psi, and close Paint Tool Shop, so that I don't have to enrage myself any further. And I will begin the slow, arduous work of trying to design Goku when I've never drawn him before. So you guys enjoyed that, and enjoy my post-commentary. I'm going to probably get something to drink and lay down a while, because I'm very tired. Okay, everyone. Bye. Now it's my time to shine. What was I thinking doing 44 minutes? 44? That's even longer than the first time I tried recording it. And guess what? I didn't even record it correctly this time either. Because what happened is I accidentally recorded all 3 monitors at the same exact time. And I think that may have caused some slowdown, I don't know. I guess I'll have to find out later. But I ended up having to play back the video and screen cap the video as it was playing. Just get it down below 4K resolution because Power Director wants me to quote-unquote upgrade in order to be able to use 4K resolution images. Wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. Okay, anyways. Found out a few things about myself in regard... not like drastic life-changing things, but, you know, in just regards to how I draw Goku here. I found out quite a few things about myself, how I draw in general. Obviously screwing up a lot of different things whenever I was doing my initial passes over him. It was kind of a good thing that I did this, but it seems like I did 4 primaries? I think it was 4 primaries before I actually did the line work. Which was a good idea. It ended up being a good idea. But as you can probably tell already, I decided to go with the Resurrection F design. Sans his little armband things. I guess no real preference. I just kind of I like the idea of not occupying so much of his arms with those big long gauntlet-like things. So I just gave him the regular old armbands. Which is kind of funny because the whole point of this video is to try to point out that you can draw differently while staying on model. But since I drew the wristbands instead of the little gauntlet things, that means that I went off model. So video over. Goodbye, everyone. But that's a secret just for you and me. Don't tell anyone, don't tell anyone. You in the comment section, I know see what your post you're gonna make. Don't you do it. Don't you do it. I'm skipping a bit ahead, but with Goku here, I did kind of realize that whenever I flipped him, for some reason he never looked quite right to me, and for the life of me, I still cannot figure out what exactly it is. And it remained that way throughout the rest of the video. I think it had something to do with the fact that he was, he's almost straight on, so you kind of expect him to look like he's perfectly symmetrical. So maybe that's just what it was, but I was trying to draw him at a slight angle so it didn't look so stiff. So maybe I didn't do it quite enough, or I don't know. It's probably something that you guys may not even notice. And also, the fact that his hair is asymmetrical like it is, I guess, was a contributing factor to it. Anyways, you'll see here doing the line work. I've decided to run with binary lines. I've kind of discovered I just really like the look of binary lines. That is to say, line work without a rasterization. It makes digital work much easier. I just like the look of it. And I have kind of slowly become both used to it and kind of infamous for using it in the first place. So it's kind of quickly becoming my style, as it were, anyways. Plus, whenever you're drawing frames like this, like, say, if you were actually doing studio work, then you're going to want not overly... Really, the lines that I'm drawing here are probably too thick for a lot of animation. Usually, they let the line work be sort of thin. That way, the color overpowers most of it, since it's being animated anyways. But I always liked heavy line work myself. Can't really have that exactly in animation most of the time. But again, my favorite era was the Saiyan era and Frieza era. And that was very heavy on line work, and kind of basic shading like that. This one, I kind of expected myself to start drawing little hatch lines to emulate shadow, but I never really did that. Just kind of under the eyes, and that's pretty much it. Kind of surprised myself. It ended up being fairly clean. But to talk about, since we're actually fleshing out Goku's physical appearance here, to talk about how I drew him in general, I drew him a whole lot like I have found that I end up drawing the girls, my girls, the Sondra girls. And, I mean, this stands to reason, of course. And I feel like the hair is probably the most identifiable aspect of how I draw them. And that it's always kind of fluffy. It's angular without being overly angular. Like I was talking about days before now. With how the hair can be drawn in certain styles, like that point that we were talking about, the hard angle. I don't have that. But I'm not making fully even strokes either, because I really don't like the look of that either. I like giving it some form of a structure about it. So I kind of ended up doing a little bit of both. And in regards to just his general body type, you'll notice I don't draw him in that anime style where the limbs are extremely long, and he's like overly kind of gaunty looking, and he looks like he's about 7 feet tall. And this, I would say that he actually looks his own height, maybe a little bit taller, but not by much. He's kind of, I tried I tried to ensure that I didn't consciously think about how I was drawing him too much, because I just wanted to kind of see what happens. But I did sort of giving sort of a mix between Dragon Ball and DBZ looks, in the sense that he's kind of puffy looking in a way, and he's kind of thick, but he's not really defined in terms of musculature or anything like that. And I'm going to be going to the shading portion here, but I didn't talk too much about the various kinds of shading, which, given how long I talked about it, quite a surprise. But kind of just my standard shading practice. I tried not to overdo it too much, because the more modern his style has gotten for whatever studio is working on him, the heavier that the shading seems to get. So I wanted to make sure that I absolutely included it. I really like his Resurrection F gi that he has, because it actually looks like a gi now. Like, it doesn't look like some sort of dumb costume. Like, it actually looks like a wrapped gi now. Like, I really appreciate that. And the fact that his belt is now asymmetrical to his the way that it's tied off and things like that. Just, there's a little bit of elements like that I actually really appreciate. His boots are probably the only thing that were kind of weird, just because they have a lot more line work now. They do look a bit more like boots that you would be wearing if you were having epic battles above the planet, I suppose. But they have so much more line work, I imagine that they must be a pain in the butt to animate, whenever it comes to the poor in-betweeners that are having to do all that work. But anyways, you guys get the idea. Here you go, here's Goku here. How's it going, buddy? But you can see how I drew him. Like, he's kind of, like I said, kind of fluffy. Kind of pettable, very pettable. He's kind of thick, but he's not overly so. His musculature is not overly defined. I think the thing that I like most about him is just the hair, just because I love drawing hair like this. And as you can see, some parts are kind of pointing up, some parts are pointing down. So it kind of has that old Dragon Ball look of everything kind of meeting to a single angle. I didn't count the number of strands or anything like that, so I kind of just drew what I felt like was going to occupy the appropriate amount of space. I kind of like how he turned out. I imagined if I drew him successive times that he would end up becoming different, but you guys get the idea. Not going to linger too much on commentary about the drawing itself this video, because, as expected, the majority of this was supposed to be about the various kinds of styles. So if you guys this is kind of a different video than I've done before. I imagine a lot of you guys were kind of irritated by it. Some of you may have thought it was kind of pleasantly interesting in some way. Just let me know what you thought of it. You can use the downvote system if you want to. I don't care. But looking at him now, you know, I really feel like he could be much improved if he were actually a girl. Let's do that. No, I'm just kidding. But he would be very improved. All the characters would be much improved if they were actually women. I'm just saying, you know? Alright, enough of terrible puns for the day. Alright, everyone, look forward to my next video, which could be anything. Could be absolutely anything. So I will see you guys next time, and I'll try to think up some more things to draw. Bigger projects coming soon, assuming that more medical issues in my family and people having their cars hit by deers stop happening. Plural of deer is deer, by the way. Don't say deers. I'm just doing it just to be cute. Alright, everyone. So long. Bye. Bye, Goku.